we've all given presentations, and think about the time where you had important presentations, important people, your boss, your boss's boss, your boss's boss's boss, and you put in a lot of effort. Your argument was impassioned, your logic unassailable, data bulletproof. A couple weeks goes by, and they decided not to go in the direction that you offered. What went wrong? Well, all too often, we focus on the content. I do a lot of work with graduate students on their presentation skills. And they all like, well, we had the best idea. So that's great. But unless you convince the other side that your idea is good, it really doesn't matter. And all too often, people make the mistake of focusing way too much on their content. Not saying that you don't need to have great content, but not enough on how they deliver that content. They don't think about who they're presenting to. So whereas the last time we chatted, I talked about these laws of social influence that can be used in any situation, and they do work. That's a piece of the puzzle. The other side of that is also then focusing on who is the primary decision maker. In any organization, when it comes to implementing a decision, there's going to be one person, maybe two, that give it the green light or decide not to go with it. But very rarely do we think about tailoring our arguments to that person. Because here's the thing. Oftentimes, decisions go awry. You say something that maybe doesn't align with your leader's thoughts, or you present a way too risky endeavor that just goes against the very nature of that person. So this begs the question: how do you improve your chances? If going through our 4-part series here that I'm doing, if you start thinking about taking these global influence tactics to be more effective, and then you can start by improving your chance even farther by taking your target into mind. Now, what I'm presenting is based on a 2-year study that interviewed and surveyed over nearly 1,700 executives. And they asked, some pretty deep probing questions that, hit things like their propensity to take risk versus when to maintain the status quo, how much they rely on trusted others' opinions, what type of facts and information they like, and things like that. And what they found is that people have natural tendencies toward various decision-making styles. And these are reinforced through success or not reinforced through repeated failure, meaning that they will change them, assuming that, they fail. And what they came up with were 5, as I mentioned. These are charismatic, thinkers, skeptics, followers, and controllers. So I'm going to go through these 5, and I'm going to talk about their traits, how they maybe interact, how they think, some tactics that you can use to be more effective when influencing them. So let's start with charismatic. Now, charismatic leaders and decision makers, they account for about 1 in 4. Here's the thing with these type of people. So think about your boss, your boss's boss, or people in your organization that make decisions, and do any of these 5 styles characterize them? Because you will see they act very differently, and different influence tactics work on them. Now, charismatic decision makers in general are easily intrigued. They get emotional and they get really excited about new ideas. Some words that describe them are captivating, talkative. They can be very, very assertive, but they bring a lot of energy. These are people that we naturally like to follow and listen to, right? They always have a bright smile on their face. When they talk, you get excited. However, experience has taught them that they get really excited, but they don't let their emotion take them over to make decisions. So what's really interesting about this group is that they can be really frustrating. Why is that? It's because they get really excited about your idea. They get excited about your idea. What do? You get excited, right? You get all worked up. You're like, yeah, this person's right on track. They're hearing me. They know exactly what I want to do, and they're on board. Well, with charismatics, you need to fight the urge to join that excitement. And in fact, what you need to do is when they get excited, undersell your approach. Take a step back. Acknowledge their excitement, but then discuss the risks that are involved with it. And it sounds counterintuitive, right? Like, don't you want to build on that excitement? Well, you might, but here's the thing with charismatics. They're going to take a step back. They're going to wait a couple weeks. They're going to try to find all the things that you didn't bring up, all the risks that you didn't bring up. So the key here is to make straightforward, simple arguments, and honestly use visual aids that stress the benefits and features of your proposal. They like to boil things down quickly. So a few other points. One, be honest and upfront about the risk. Don't try to minimize it. Don't try to put it off, but figure out ways to minimize those. Something else. With this enthusiasm comes the love of shiny objects, right? Squirrel, boom, they're one direction, right? You got to get them their attention focused at the beginning, so you need to start with the most critical information first. They don't like a lot of buildup. They will lose motivation. Then likely what they're going to do is take over, because they do prefer interactive meetings. They're likely to move around and even take control of the discussion overall. If that's the case, what you need to do is utilize them, lead them towards the arguments that you want to make. Lastly, they often rely on other high-profile execs in their company. So it might be good to try to get them in your pocket to help them persuade your leader. They also expect you to wait for them to make a decision. They don't like to be hurried, and pushing them only makes them want to push back. Interestingly, here's a few buzzwords that usually work really well with them. They like things like results, proven, actions, something that's easy and clear, something that creates focus. These are ways to move charismatic decision makers in your direction. And if anyone has questions, by the way, throw them out there, and then I'm more than happy to stop and answer. The next one is thinkers. Now, these are a much smaller percent of the population of executives. They're usually around 10, 11%. These people aren't known for their social skills and tend to guard their emotions. Now, not to be stereotypical, but the thinker executives that I've usually been involved with have a tendency of having computer science or engineering backgrounds or hard science backgrounds, chemistry, physics, biology, those sorts of things. And that's not really surprising. The thing is, thinkers have two strong visceral desires in business. One is to anticipate change because they like to think through a lot of different options. Bill Gates, Michael Dell are really good examples of this. And they like to win. Also, though, they're some of the toughest to persuade because they pride themselves in their ability to outthink and outmaneuver others. They are impressed with arguments that are supported by data. They also have a strong risk aversion, meaning bringing in, these brand new high risk scenarios or options, probably not the way to go with a thinker, because they really like to control their environment. They'd rather control than innovate a lot of times. And they can be really slow to make a decision because they want to think through. They're very deliberate in their decision-making process, and they want to weigh all the information. They also can be thought of as cerebral, intelligent, logical, very academic. When you present to them, you need to have a ton of data available. Everything, market research, customer surveys, case studies, do your SWOT analysis, your cost benefits analysis, and so on. This is one of those presentations where your appendix at the end of your slides are longer than your presentation. So when they ask questions, you can slide down to them and say, "Oh, I'm glad you thought of that." Or "I'm glad you asked that. We've thought about it. We did the sensitivity analysis. These are our projections." However, probably one of the single most important piece of information that you can have is a strong understanding of the methodology involved. They want to know how you got from point A to point B. They don't take numbers as a given. They want to know the how and the why. They also can take a contradictory point of view. Think about someone who thinks through things very, deliberately. Also, they can be very introspective. So whereas when you're in a meeting with a charismatic, they may talk over and talk a lot. When you're presenting to a thinker, you may not think they're paying attention because they're in their own mind, being very introspective and digesting all that information. So they're being much more silent. Also, when influence a thinker, you need, similar to charismatics, you need to know their risk up front, since they're more risk averse. And you need to openly communicate these to them. Because if they think about something that you don't and bring it up, a lot of your credibility is eroded. And your arguments really need to appeal to their intelligence. Their thought process is very selective, not always completely methodical, even though that they would like you to think so. And this is because they love a good bargain or a low risk win. If something's easy, and they'd rather take the sure thing that provides a 3 to 5% return on investment than a thing that's got a 50% chance of getting a 15 or 20%, even though the ROI is higher on that one. Now, you really need to understand their past too, and projects that have either succeeded or failed, because these people never forget a bad experience or decision. And that's because they feel that they should have made a better decision and they didn't. So they always hold on to those failures. So if you're presenting something that reminds them of something they did in the past that didn't work, you don't have a snowball chance in hell of getting that past them. Now, some of the buzzwords that work for them are things like quality and academic, intelligent, proof, expert, those sorts of things. And it's funny, you're like, really, these words work? I'm telling you, like, it's funny, but just like when we talked about the 6 laws of influence, it's the little things that a lot of times make a huge difference. Next are my personal favorite, the skeptics. In fact, they account for almost 1 in 5 executives. These are the people which I give a lot of presentations and present a lot of research, right? So in academia, we have a lot of skeptics, and these are the folks that are highly suspicious of every data point. You say something, they bring up 10 things of why it could be wrong. And they have a tendency of have very strong personalities. Maybe not the most socially astute individuals. They are especially suspicious of data that challenges their worldview and how they see things or their assumptions. And they almost have this combative, aggressive style. And then they're usually very assertive. We may call those people assholes a lot of times. So, because they can be very demanding, disagreeable. They're often very disruptive and rebellious types of people. Here's the thing. When you're presenting, meetings are very stressful. They may get up and leave temporarily. They may take a phone call or a text while you're doing it, even carry on a side conversation, which can really throw you off. They're very demanding of your time and energy, love to argue. With thinkers, when they barrage you with questions, it's not personal. With skeptics, it is. They want to take you down. It makes them feel good to dominate and to make you look foolish. Here's the thing. You can't let this get to you. You need to stay cool, present, answer questions, provide information and data that you can. Because at the end, there is less guesswork around them. You almost always immediately know where you stand with them. If they like your presentation and like your idea, you're going to know that immediately. Conversely, you're also going to know if they don't like it immediately. So, an influence a skeptic, here's the thing. You need credibility. However, skeptics tend to trust people who are similar to them. Remember the last talk that we had about the law of liking? With the skeptic, you need to find something in common with them. Whether you went to the same school, was in the same fraternity or sorority, grew up in the same hometown, etc. Both like to play squash, or badminton or whatever the case may be. Try to find something that you have in common with them. What you can also do is get an endorsement from someone that they trust prior to a meeting. And one way to be successful of this is find whoever their trusted person is and co-opt them, right? Get them on your side. And actually, the best thing to do would be to help them present your idea or your project with you, because that provides automatic credibility. Now, on the other hand, skeptics have a tendency of having a very high thought of themselves. So their reputation is very important. They usually have huge egos. So if a skeptic is challenging you and they happen to be factually inaccurate or wrong about something, calling them out is probably not the best way to handle that. It can be really, really risky, actually. So you need to be able to correct them by allowing them to save face. For example, if they bring up like, oh, last quarter's numbers, you're like, that is true. You're right there. These numbers would be different. They were based on last quarter's numbers, but these are the new numbers that just came out and are based on this, on this current quarter or this current time frame's numbers. So you can allow them to save face, but still correct them. They also hate being helped. They want people to think they know it all. And as you can tell, some of the buzzwords that enthrall a skeptic are much different. You want to get them to feel in charge, that that they can take action and and do what they want to do, essentially. The next decision-making style are followers. And when I was doing research on this quite a long time ago, not that long ago, but seems like that long ago with COVID, almost over a third of executives would be considered followers in their decision-making style. And I thought that was kind of interesting because what executive wants to be called a follower, right? But here's the thing, they're seldom early adopters, and they are very good at seeing the world through other people's eyes. They're very responsible decision makers, and you find these a lot in larger corporations. And after doing this and meeting a lot of executives in the Des Moines area, in large corporations, like, this makes a lot of sense. Followers can often be described as responsible, cautious, say brand-driven, bargain-conscious. Here's the thing. They can be similar to and mistaken for skeptics because they may engage in a long list of issues and challenge you constantly, but don't be fooled. In the end, they will only agree to something that they've seen elsewhere. That's where the following part comes in. However, kind of the irony is that a follower will hardly ever concede that they're actually followers. They exude a take charge approach, but often will capitulate or yield to you when challenged. The thing is, they're not inherently suspicious, as compared to a skeptic. They actually just want a better grasp of what they don't understand. So a skeptic is literally challenging you just to challenge you. When a follower is asking questions, it's not personal. They're not inherently suspicious. They're just trying to get a better grasp of what they don't understand. Because as a general rule, if someone is really difficult to classify, a skeptic's pretty easy, charismatic, usually pretty easy thinker. If you can't classify someone, then they're likely a follower. So think about that, right? You're like, I don't know this like this. Sometimes they act like this, sometimes they act like that. They're actually probably a follower. The good side on this, though, in fact, they're typically some of the more easiest to persuade. So in influencing them, don't try to sell yourself unless you have a very strong track record of success with them. Remember, they like proven, what has worked in the past will work for me now. That's their mantra. So if you're trying to sell them on something new and you're using yourself as it, you better have a proven track record before you do it. So instead, look for past decision that the manager has supported and couch your argument around that. They also love referencing testimonials from people that they trust, from other companies that have done something similar. Because here's the kind of the rub. Ideally, followers want solutions that are innovative, yet proven. New, but trusted. Leading edge, yet safe. So you almost have to couch your stance in something that is, new, that's innovative, that's leading edge, but is also been done before. And I hope you see the irony there, right? They want to think they're doing leading edge things, but they want to be safe. And a number of the buzzwords in that are things like innovate, expedite. So you're using words that, are kind of innovative, new edge, but then relate to something that they've seen work in the past. Lastly, we have controllers. My favorite example of a controller is actually Martha Stewart, because no one would ever think that. These folks actually only account for less than 10% on average of executives. Here's the thing, controllers hate uncertainty and ambiguity. It causes them stress beyond belief. And they like to think that they would focus purely on facts and analytics of the argument. They are typically described as logical, unemotional, very detailed, or in a very analytical people. They want to have their thumb on the process the entire time. Controllers also have strong personalities and can be very overbearing. Here's the thing. In their minds, they think that they're the best, say, salesperson, strategist, marketing expert, operations expert, etc. They think that they're the penultimate expert. However, they're often can be described as loners and are typically very self-absorbed. So whereas followers are really good at seeing the world through other people's eyes, controllers see the world only from their own perspective. And will typically make snap judgments and make remarks to alienate others that disagree with how they see the world. They also make unilateral decisions. They may discuss, the problem or the project, whatever, with their other executives. They really won't listen or consider their input. Here's the thing, though. You have to overcome their fears. You have to cover them up by paying attention. And here's the thing, because they hate ambiguity and uncertainty so much, they will latch on to piece of information that you present, and they're like a bulldog. They will hold on to that one piece that they think might be a little wrong or that they don't agree with, and they'll have you chasing down more information. They'll question your processes and methodology behind it, etc. So what you need to do is figure out what are their fears and then assuage those fears, which is, I know, easier said than done. So in influencing, what do you need to do? Well, one thing you need to understand that in a meeting, you got to be prepared for long silences, because they're very self-absorbed, and like a thinker, whereas a thinker's thinking about the information, the methodology a lot of times that you're presenting, with the data, a controller is thinking about, all right, how does this information either create more uncertainty in my world, or how does it contradict what I know or how I feel? So the arguments need to be very straightforward and structured and highly credible. Here's the thing. They want details, but not from you, only if they're presented by the expert. So if you're presenting them, you better be the expert. You better have the credibility with them. Also, these people will not capitulate, meaning they won't give up. If you're having a debate with them, like I said, they're like a bulldog. They're going to just, bite in and not give up. But here's the thing. Even though they seek facts and information, I hate to say this, it doesn't mean that they're going to make an intelligent, rational decision. Because remember, they hate uncertainty and ambiguity, and they're going to pursue a solution that really minimizes that for them. Also, you can't be too aggressive when pushing your proposals on them. You got to give them information and allow them to make the decisions themselves. Hopefully, by doing that, you can, they can take their ample time. Now, here's the thing. Controllers and skeptics, I know, sound a lot alike. One of the key differences is that controllers need a lot of time to make decisions, whereas with a skeptic, you'll know almost immediately. Here's some buzzwords that go along with controllers: details, facts, reason, logic. They like to have power, so understand that. So wrapping all this up, I do want to, bring a couple points. Like none of these labels are meant to be derogatory or anything. no one decision-making style is actually superior. Each can be highly effective and depending on the environment. Also, decision-making is a highly complicated process that we honestly may never really understand. However, people do have decision-making preferences, and they're usually relatively consistent in these. And we do have preferences for hearing, seeing certain types of information at different stages of the decision-making process. And understanding that can really help you get a leg up when you're trying to influence your boss or leader. And remember something, you're always constantly selling, right? You're selling yourself, you're trying to influence, to try to get yourself in a better position at work, to get that promotion, the corner office, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You're constantly doing that. And hopefully this has, made you think a little bit differently about how to possibly persuade your boss's boss in the future. So I do leave you with one question, which is, how do you determine your your leader's decision-making style? And I'm hoping that as I was going through this, that you thought about, oh, my leader's more like this, or this really describes my leader. That's what I have for now.
Awesome. I love that you included, I have 2 pages of notes, and I took them on paper in case anything happens with my computer. I'm like, I don't want to lose them. So thank you. I love that you included everything down to the buzzwords. I can't wait to implement this. So interesting. Yes, I would have one question, and let's open it up to Q&A. So anybody with questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat box. So let's say that you are trying to sell or influence someone who you maybe don't have a relationship built enough to know which type they might fall under. You think it's safest? Is it safest to go with the followers approach? Just statistically, it sounds like there's maybe 30% chance.
What I would say is, hopefully you've got a relationship with someone that the leader knows, right? Or maybe someone that the leader knows that knows, right? There's a structural hole in there that someone can connect you to someone and utilize the people around it, right? Because what you're doing is a presentation, and it's right. It's for the betterment of the company, right? That's what you always, house everything. It's like, if you're working for the company and you're trying to put together a proposal or, in presentation, you're in the information gathering stage. These are some, little questions you can ask those people who know them, and building credibility yourself with them, because you're making the effort to hopefully get a better idea of how they make decisions.
Awesome. That makes sense. Yeah. It looks like we've got a question from Nicole. Good question. She wants to know, did you find that any executives were a combination of any of these types, or do they typically lean towards one?
So overall, they have a tendency of lean towards them, but you notice there is some overlap, right? Like thinkers, skeptics, followers, charismatic, right? Like they all share some similarities, right? So it's kind of figuring out those little nuances on what describe. But yeah, you can be, you can think of someone as having some skeptic in them, but being charismatic, right? Like, so they have to be a little bit of a contrarian, but they may lean more charismatic. So they're a little more outgoing, et cetera, maybe a little less self-absorbed. So yeah, absolutely, right? Like there's not, what I hate in research and in teaching is when people do these arbitrary splits, because you take a survey and you get a 4.7 out of 10 on something, that means you're this, where if you'd get a 5.1, you'd be something else. When really there's no difference in a third of a point on a 10-point scale. But yet, if you're on one side of it, you're an eagle, on the other side, you're a hawk. Right? That is what really upsets me as a researcher and someone who likes to teach us that, all right, you're kind of in this area, so you can lean towards this or this, right? Like you're going to have the hardcore skeptics, and you have people that maybe are a little more towards the middle that float around a little bit. But that's just, fact finding and trying to figure out what, the type of information and the type of decision maker that your leader is.
Okay. So a question similar to that Mackenzie has. She wants to know, if you're presenting to a group of decision makers, how do you determine what approach to take there? Because they could easily be 3 different types.
I found that almost in any room, there's going to be people are going to look to one person. There's almost ultimately one person that carries more weight than everyone else. It may not even, here's the funny part, it may not actually be the decision maker. It might be the decision maker's right-hand person that they rely on a lot. So it's your job to figure out, all right, like who's got the most sway, who has the last say, and then tailor your messaging to that. And in fact, like you may, if you got several people in the room, you may have to do a multi-pronged approach and, try to hit a little bit of everyone. The thing is, a lot of this is trying to understand, having been really well prepared and then trying to figure out how can I take it that extra 5%, right? And just tweak it a little bit to make sure that I hit those things, right? Because a lot of times within the first 5 minutes, a lot of people are going to have an idea if they want to move forward or not. And then you got to take it one way or the other, right? Like if you get them hooked, especially with the charismatic, like they want to be hooked quick. Skeptic, right? Like they're going to be, they're going to take longer. A follower, right? Like if you bring something up brand new, that's just like, that's way too much for them, right? So even if you have the exact same solution, how you present it matters. How you frame it matters. The references you use can really help you a lot. With a follower just saying something like, well, I believe you play golf with, whoever, they did something very similar at their company, 6 months ago. Oh, well, okay. Well, if it's good enough for Jane over there, it's probably good enough for me.
So then would you use the same tactic to figure out who maybe the unofficial decision maker is, using a connection you have or something, or would you start with one approach, look for reactions?
I'm a big fan of talking to people, and this is honestly where the happy hours, those informal things come up, right? Just having coffee with someone, going to lunch. This is information that underlying, every organization, everybody has an underlying, they have underlying motivations. They have political motivation. And by political, I don't mean, conservative, liberal. I just mean, right, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in an organization that doesn't align with your job title. There's a lot of things that have to get done in an organization that doesn't fall under anyone's job title. Right? If the boss comes to you and says, hey, I need you to get this done, like, great, I have no formal authority. How do I get people in 4 different departments on board, giving up their time to help me achieve this? Right? It's about influence. It's about finding people's motivations. And, that's very important in any organizational setting.
So follow-up question that Nick had, he wants to know, depending on who you're talking to, is there going to be a difference between Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies and their executives, or maybe smaller, nonprofits and other local organizations?
So from what I've done the research, followers have a tendency of being a little more successful in your larger corporations because it's about not getting fired a lot of times. It's about making safer choices, right? Like you're not looking for huge 15, 20% ROIs, right? You just need something to keep you in the green and keep you moving forward. And that being said, right, like Elon Musk, definitely not a follower, right? Like he's probably a skeptic, tied into maybe a little charismatic. I don't know. Like he seems to be a little wild card, so to speak, right? And he's done pretty well. But like you've got charismatic folks, and ones I think of are like Richard Branson or Herb Keller, guys like that. You've got, I told you, thinkers like Bill Gates always pops in my head for that. Followers like Carla Fiorina, Peter Kors, people like that. You've got Larry Ellison's a great example of a skeptic. You've got people from all over the place, but a lot of times the followers get to where they do is because they make good, solid, safe choices. And you can always find the ones that made a risky choice and was successful, right? But those are more the outliers than what would be follow within the norm.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. Any other questions from any of the attendees, anyone on the chamber team?
So I see a question. It's a combination. There's so much great research out there. So when you do your own research, you're building upon a foundation of other research. And there's people a lot smarter than me who've done a lot of great things. So I always take what they've done, obviously, right, and bring it to what I do. That's literally how research works, right? You have this foundation of knowledge, and your goal is to just incrementally add to it.
Awesome. We have something in it's called a We Do More newsletter that we send out once a month, and we each of us on the chamber team put out some kind of a recommendation, and a lot of them have been books or podcasts lately. So are there any, just out of curiosity, I know that was asked too, are there any in general, any podcasts that you're a big fan of, or books in general that you've maybe been reading the past few months?
I read books. I haven't done much the last month because I've got a newborn. So that's not as been, I've been just trying to survive and function as an adult. But I do a lot of reading. I don't listen to as much podcasts. Honestly, what I listen to is sports talk radio, so I can actually get caught up with sports a little bit, because I don't get a chance. Funny, I don't get a chance to watch much sports anymore, which is kind of depressing. But I typically read books that are based in research, or at least by people who've done research in the past, so they know how. So they just don't make up wild and crazy things. But occasionally there's a book that I read that's more from a practitioner based. And the one I've read recently is Never Split the Difference. I like that one. There's another one on negotiation, which is what's it? Right at left. It's Start with No. Those are both two pretty fun books that I read, but I don't have time to listen to a lot of podcasts right now. I used to listen to stuff when I was in my vehicle, but not in my vehicle much anymore.
Yeah, me too. That was kind of my commute drive.
Mm-hmm.
Not as far of a commute now.
Yeah.
On the hallway.
I've got a solid 15 feet. So.
I love this. Somebody's asking, so what is your daughter? What type is she? Do you think she'll be a thinker, a skeptic, follower, controller, or charismatic?
Yes.
Yes, those.
Yeah, I can tell you that she's got a very strong personality already. So it's going to be fun, because between a combination of her and my mother, her mother and myself, we're in for it. That's all I can say.
Well, hey, I know you're busy with her, and I know you're running on minimal sleep. So we appreciate you being here with us today to share all of this awesome information. I mean, that was jam-packed full of so much that you can literally just take and apply right away. So thank you, as always, for being so great, and big thanks to Nick and your whole team for sponsoring the whole program and making this possible with Dr. Summers. And thank you to all the attendees who joined us today, regardless of fun technology, computer power issues. We're glad that you could hop on. We are recording this, so if there's anything that you want to reference later, skip back to, you missed a note, we will get it up on YouTube within the next 24 hours, so check that out. With that, thank you so much. Everyone have a good rest of your day and rest of your week. Hope to see you soon.
Amazing information. Thank you so much. So insightful.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's so interesting.
Incredible.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Kara. Thank
Everyone.
you, Kara. Amazing.
Thanks, everyone. See you soon.